Welcome to BioIT World's Trends from the Trenches podcast, your insider's look at the science, technology, and executive trends driving the life sciences. I'm Allison Proffitt, editor of BioIT World. This episode is hosted by Stan Gloss, founder of BioTeam, a life sciences IT consulting company at the intersection of science, data, and technology. Today, Stan talks with Lita Sands, Global Head of Life Sciences Business Development at Amazon Web Services, about what digital transformation trends she's seeing across the life sciences. Let's listen in.
Lita, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast today. I've really been looking forward to it. And it started with your presentation and moderation of the BioIT World panel last year. This is when I first got to know you, and as soon as I saw your moderation on that panel, you became one of my next interviews to do. So I'm finally getting the opportunity to do that with you, and I'm really excited.
Thank you so much, Stan.
Yep. So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your educational background and the journey, your career journey to how you got to AWS.
Sure. Well, I think the moment of origin for me was in second grade when I showed up to class wearing a blue Mr. Spock Star Trek shirt. And that branded me definitely as a geek. And I think that it also led to a lifelong passion I've had for how technology can have a positive impact in patients' lives. And I was really fortunate to get into life sciences back in 2000 at Pfizer and help to deploy some of the first CRM systems to help solve problems like how do we help make patient adherence better? And, until then, people thought those problems were intractable, but we had great results. And, fast forward a little further down the road, and I got to work for Novartis for a CEO who really believed in the power of technology to lead business transformation. And we did a number of great things together, including being able to develop some of the first patient digital medicine for people who had COPD. Again, another segment that people said we're not going to make a difference, but we did. So fast forward to today, working for for AWS and with the cloud, I have never seen such an amazing impact on our industry as we've had with the cloud over these past 4 years or so that I've been with the company. And I've seen everything from companies like Moderna being able to dramatically change drug discovery all the way through to finally being able to scale real world evidence to have a meaningful impact on precision medicine. So that's my story.
Yeah, we're really fortunate that we have cloud technology solutions. If you think about it during the COVID crisis and all of the supply chain problems that we had, I'm sure that has impacted the utilization of the resources at AWS, right?
We have seen over these past few years, companies across all industries accelerate their journey to the cloud. So, be happy to talk to you more about what we're seeing in life sciences. But yeah, I would say that overall, we've seen maybe what would have taken 8 to 10 years of transformation happen in the space of 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, and then that's what's happening in every organization. The speed at what we're all doing, we all were digitally transforming. But now with COVID, we've really had to accelerate that. So there are four we talked a little bit about digital transformation. There are 4 technologies that are really kind of driving a lot of transformation. They're cloud, data science, Internet of Things, and AI and machine learning. I would like to get your perspective on a couple of them that I think you really have deep perspective on. So maybe we could talk a little bit about how the cloud is powering digital transformation to start.
Sure. Well, I would say that science drives the cloud as much as the cloud drives science. And what I mean by that is, AWS has been working with the life science industry for almost a decade now. And we have helped so many companies modernize across the entire value chain so they can accelerate advanced therapeutics and precision medicine to patients around the world. And no matter which company it is that we work with, we always start with the data. And until the cloud, it was very difficult for companies to untrap the data that was stuck in these silos across the value chain and really have a holistic view of what that therapy is doing as it progresses to market. And then at the same time, something else happened. We saw an amazing amount of scientific innovation that led to an explosion of data. So whether it's medical images or human genome sequencing, or the use of cryogenic electronic microscopy or cryo-EM, which can now look at proteins at the molecular level, we're getting amazing insights into the human body, but it's generating terabytes and petabytes of data. And this innovation and this amount of data is far too much for any on-prem data center to keep up with, let alone provide the high performance compute environment and the GPUs needed to process this data and provide these types of insights. So, that's where we've been working with our customers, is to help accelerate the use of this amazing data to drive greater insights. And that's why just, last year alone, we've seen Takeda, Pfizer, Roche, Gilead, so many pharma companies announce that they're moving all or major parts of their value chain onto the AWS cloud. And I think one company in particular really illustrates this journey quite well. 2 years ago, AstraZeneca set a goal. They wanted to process 2 million genomes by the year 2026. But when they did it in their on-prem data center, they could only do 20,000 in 20 days. And at that rate, they'd missed their goal by many years. So they came to AWS, and we worked with them to move their genomic workflow onto us. And we were able to achieve the processing of 20,000 genomes in 20 hours, a 2,400% increase. Not only that, but they were also then able to run an amazing amount of statistical tests against this genomic database. To now they're at the point where they can run 110 billion tests within 30 hours. And they're contributing those insights to 45 different drug discovery programs as we speak. They also followed up and they said, hey, let's test AI on medical images. And by using our SageMaker annotation called a ground truth, they were able to reduce the time it took to annotate medical images by 50%. So not only are they getting this work done faster, but more importantly, the scientists don't have to focus on these tasks, which are not really, high science or leading edge things. They're very commodity. And instead, they can now focus on discovery. So we were so thrilled to see in December, AstraZeneca joined us at reInvent, and they talked about now they have moved everything from drug development all the way to pharmacovigilance on the AWS cloud. And every part of that journey is supported by AI/ML throughout, so that they can do exactly what we've been talking about, accelerate life-saving drugs to patients around the globe. It's a pretty amazing journey, and it only took 2 years.
That's an incredible story. Yeah. And, it goes back to the speed of science is really the speed of being able to get answers to your questions.
Yeah.
How fast you can answer a question is how fast science goes. And in fact, that's BioTeam's mission. Our mission is to accelerate science. So we're right with you on that. That's what we wake up every day to try to give back and make it easy for the scientists to access the data they need to do the work that they have to do without wrangling technology and wrangling data. That's just a waste of time, to be honest. So
exactly.
Lita, you hit on AI and machine learning, and many organizations are really kind of have little initiatives going around machine learning and AI. I'd love to get your insights and perspectives on what you're seeing specifically on AI and machine learning.
Sure. We have seen so many use cases now across the value chain at scale. It's almost a question of, where is it not being used these days? But some of my favorite areas are areas that were intractable for a long time. So let's take manufacturing. We've known that there were huge opportunities to increase efficiencies and productivity in the shop floor, but often manufacturers would have to spend millions of dollars to retool and modernize their plant. Well, by using the AWS cloud plus IoT and AI/ML, we've had companies like Novo Nordisk and Novartis be able to implement capabilities that help them achieve massive gain in efficiencies by doing things like having models that predict when a machine is ready for maintenance or if it's going to fail. Novartis was able to install our IoT green grass on the local shop floor to be able to do things like line clearance analysis, things that were not possible before. And just these small incremental investments have yielded an amazing amount of return to the plants and increased a lot of efficiency. And then as we look further down the value chain, my other favorite area is in the area of pharmacovigilance. Over the past few years, life science companies have wanted to engage more and more with patients, but that has led to a lot more data coming in. So whether it's social media or it's coming through call centers, it's a lot of data to sift through, and it's very costly. So what we have so far now, we have companies like Amgen and Lilly and Sanofi who've all implemented AI/ML to reduce the cost of doing this, transcribing text, scanning through social media, automating all of that, and only sending the most serious cases onto a human being to review. And not only has that reduced the cost, but more importantly, for the first time ever, companies are able to turn that data into an incredible source of insight. So they can now start to get early warning indicators if there is an issue and act very quickly. So these are just some of the examples that we're seeing. And one other area that I think is really amazing is in the area of precision medicine. Precision medicine is saving lives every single day, but it cannot scale without precision diagnostics. And I really want to give a shout out to Roche. Roche built Navify a couple of years ago. It is a virtual tumor board. And it was designed with the insight that it was really getting difficult for oncology care teams to make the right decision around a treatment for a patient who had cancer. And this is an area where minutes matter, but it would take them, days and weeks to pull the information from different systems and then agree on the right course of therapy. Well, Roche created the Navify, which is a virtual tumor board. And it brings together all of this data into one spot and employs AI/ML so that these oncologists have access to the data they need and can make decisions very rapidly. So these, I think, are some of my favorite examples of how companies are using AI/ML on AWS today.
Boy, I love that example of the tumor board. It's almost, this month is the 20th anniversary of my father passing away from pancreatic cancer. And that was the year I founded the company, specifically to find ways to accelerate science so that other families didn't have to experience what my family experienced. So that example that you just shared is near and dear to my heart. So thank you so much. That was awesome. I want to get back to talking a little bit more about digital transformation. We touched on it earlier. I recently read from Forbes, they talked about 70% of digital transformation efforts fail. Let me ask you, do you think that's a valid rate? And what are you hearing? You talk to a lot of executives about digital transformation. What are you hearing?
As a former head of digital transformation myself, what I will tell you is that no digital transformation ever really fails. And if you take a look at that article and some of the companies they talk about, many of those companies went on to be really successful in their initiatives. So let me tell you what I saw that happened during COVID and why I think that no digital transformation ever fails. It's really important that our customers and companies out there do experiment with things like AI/ML and IoT and the cloud, all the stuff that we're talking about, because one day you're going to need to use that muscle. And when you do, it's going to scale really fast. So prior to COVID, we're working with a lot of companies on doing these things across the value chain. And then all of a sudden COVID hit. And what happened? We saw companies like Moderna, amazing company born on the AWS cloud, who were able to take the technology they created to create personalized cancer vaccines using their mRNA technology and turn around and scale that up so that they were able to create a COVID vaccine in 1 year. 1 year, when everybody said there's no way it could be done in less than the average of 10 years. And they were able to scale up production and be one of the major players out there when it came to vaccine distribution. Another example, clinical trials, they almost were shut down overnight. The drug development pipeline would have been a mess. But the companies that invested in understanding how to use mobile capabilities, what does e-consent look like? What does e-PRO look like? They were the ones that were able to put them back online. And according to Tufts, more than half went to some form of mobile and were able to continue collecting data. avoiding a complete shutdown. So I think, these are some examples. And another example is, virtually overnight, all companies had to move to some form of virtual detailing with physicians. And the ones that had figured it out were able to scale up quickly. So now that we're coming out on the other end of COVID, what we're seeing is that companies want to sustain this. And in fact, a lot of physicians have said, you know what, I really like this digital engagement. So now we're seeing companies like Pfizer and Novartis publicly saying that we are going to be launching brands without a rep. Now, what that means is not that there will be no humans involved, but what it means is they heard from customers that, yes, I want to have this kind of experience. I prefer it above all others. So that's why, even though some of these companies, many of them had digital transformation efforts before, and people probably said, oh, they were small scale or they didn't succeed. When the time came, they were able to flex this, scale up, meet the market where it is, and now sustain that innovation to a higher level of transformation than they were before.
Great. So what advice would you have for organizations today that are continuing with their journey along digital transformation?
Sure. So we are in a unique position of working with companies across many industries who are going through digital transformation. So between that and the experience I've had working with our customers, we've synthesized this into a couple of key steps. The first thing is your senior management has to be aligned that they're going to be moving to the cloud. And of course, translate that into business objectives and be very prescriptive in terms of the goals and objectives that they want to set for the organization. And I'd encourage people to take a 1 to 3 year view of what that looks like. The second thing is we have to supply education to employees. And that's something that AWS has done. We educate hundreds of thousands of people on the AWS cloud every year and provide education for business leaders as well as people working in technology. The third thing is don't try to boil the ocean. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Keep your initial goals achievable. People need to be motivated. They need to see that success and be inspired to keep going. So, keep the end in mind, but make sure that you have really good mileposts along the way so that you can show success. The next thing is what I've learned and what our company has really seen over these past few years is how important partners are to digital transformation. You do not have to build everything. There are amazing partners out there, Benchling and TetraScience and the labs, all the way through to Deloitte's Converge Health for real-world evidence. Companies have invested in these platforms. They are built for industry. They're validated. They will get you going faster than ever before, so you can focus on what's unique to your drug portfolio and the insights that you can generate and not worry about having to support large-scale systems. And then my final piece of advice, you're never going to be done. Do not think that this is once and done. The only thing that should be fixed in an organization is the customer as your North Star. And everything, as we like to say at Amazon, should work backward from there so that you can continue to understand what your customers need and design experiences that help meet that need better than anybody else.
That's terrific. You actually hit on one of my favorite topics to talk about, which is education. So you did touch on that these initiatives need to be centrally guided and locally executed. So can we talk a little bit about the C-suite and the executives? One factor in having successful digital transformation is the level of digital fluency of the executives. How important is it for executives to be digitally literate in leading digital transformation efforts?
I would say it is essential to their jobs to be able to do that. We have heard so many CEOs now talk about their life science companies as data and technology organizations or data-driven companies. And implicit in that is that you are fluent in understanding what that means and how those technologies that we've been discussing impact your business. So how will you hold your teams accountable? What questions will you be able to ask them if you're not fluent in understanding this? And, to your point around education, a couple of years ago, actually, when I came on board, one of my jobs was to help us better connect the line of business leaders and help educate them on what's possible with the cloud. So now, 4 years later, we have so much content available for them. We have our healthcare life science summits where we hear from a number of business leaders about how they've used the cloud with real case studies and real results like I've been sharing. We have reInvent. I mentioned AstraZeneca presented, J&J presented, Vertex presented just in December. We have years of content on that. And we also, of course, have our account teams and our groups, our innovation advisory teams that can come out and educate the C-suite on what this looks like. But if you don't know what's possible, and again, some of the numbers and some of the results I see us achieve are almost, nothing short of magical. If you don't know what's possible, you'll never be able to get your organization to move at that speed and be able to achieve the goals that your organization can go after.
So we talk about, that's great feedback on the C-suite. Now I would like to move down to the line organizations. And I had an interview recently with at BioIT World in September of 21 with Mike Montello and at GSK. And Mike discussed the mind shift that's going on at GSK from a project mindset to a product mindset. And how important do you think that is to making that shift and executing a digital transformation strategy?
I think Mike was spot on. And the reason I say that is, as we work with our customers in a very similar way, we want to have an outcomes-based focus. So for example, if I'm going to go and talk to a scientist about cryo-EM, I am not going to mention to this person what specific EC2 instance we're going to be using. Instead, I'm going to be talking to them about how we can rapidly set up a high-performance compute environment for them, or how we have these top 3 partners who can come in and do that. And then this is what we're going to be able to achieve for you. And too often what I'm seeing in organizations, a couple of things happen. One is they make the mistake of splitting the digital transformation org and the line of business leaders, and they inadvertently set them up to compete with each other. Really, those two groups should be working hand in hand with each other and have common goals and objectives. And by doing what Mike talked about, moving to more of that product mindset or outcomes mindset, they can then better understand how they need to achieve their business goals supported by this technology. I think then the other problem that you have in certain situations is technology groups can be maybe too focused on creating a capability without a business strategy. So I've heard of a lot of companies who have rolled out CRM systems, but then they look at it and they say, well, now what do we do? So as opposed to if they work maybe more closely with the line of business leaders, they'd be able to design those customer experiences and then maximize the value in that CRM system overnight. So I think that these ways of having the technology organizations and the line of business organizations collaborate more closely together, I think really hits the sweet spot of helping technology accelerate their transformation goals and achieve better business outcomes faster.
That's great. So I know I would like to wrap this up soon. So I want to ask you a question about the future. And you don't have to disclose any secrets unless you want to. But I think people listening to this podcast, knowing that you work at AWS, would really love to understand where they can expect to see AWS go in the future. Maybe you can give us a little preview of coming attractions.
Sure. Well, with over a decade now of working with the industry, we are so passionate about the impact that our customers are making in patients' lives. And last year, we launched AWS for Health, which was a signal to everybody saying that we are deeply investing in this space. And we want to continue to build out core capabilities across 16 different unique areas across the value chain. So what does that mean? That means that we're going to be working really closely with our partners to help accelerate their capabilities. Our pace of innovation is amazing, and sometimes it's hard for folks to keep up with it. So like this year, we're working with our partners to better incorporate tools like AWS HealthLake or IoT TwinMaker, for example. The other areas that we're working on is, we're seeing 3 key trends in the marketplace that customers are asking us for help. One is how do they sustain the pace of innovation they had during COVID? So we're helping them do that throughout the value chain, as we've been discussing. How do I implement AI, ML across the value chain? what does the new commercial model look like? How do I create new patient services? And one of my favorite ones is what Medtronic did with their pill cam. If you've seen that, it's basically a colon exam in a capsule that you can ingest, and a recorder will take your readings and send it to your doctor, and they can determine if you have any polyps that need to be investigated. So we're going to continue to help our customers innovate around new services that help meet patients where they are in this unique situation that we're in.
That's fantastic. So my last question to you is, you're a successful executive, and a lot of the people who listen to our podcast are younger professionals in technology and science that are, looking for career advice from executives like you. So what career advice could you give an aspiring scientist and technologist who wants to move their career forward?
Sure. So when I got my undergrad degree, I mentioned to you I was very passionate about technology. I didn't just get a major in computer science. I also got a major in business with a marketing emphasis. And the reason I did that is I always felt intuitively that one needed the other to really shine. So what I would tell folks today is, if you have a technical background, find a way to apply it in this industry. And if you have a science background, make sure you're up to date on the technology and follow your passion. So my favorite person right now, I just look at him as a hero, is Christoph Gorgula. And he is a postdoctoral researcher at Harvard University. And he came with a passion for trying to target the most difficult areas of discovery, and that's protein-protein interactions, which are considered undruggable targets. This is very, very difficult. But what he did was he took his passion for science and his passion for technology, and he created a platform called Virtual Flow, which is a structure-based virtual screening platform that will enable rapid analysis of protein-protein interactions. Now, normally, if you worked in a wet lab, you'd be doing normal high throughput screening, can at most process 500,000 to 1 million compounds, and that will take weeks or months and be very, very expensive. But with Virtual Flow, he was able to process billions, that's billions with a B, of compounds in 6.5 hours, and set a record for AWS for lighting up the most CPUs in any region. And that was 2.3 million virtual CPUs. And that's just mind-blowing. And the cost was $140,000 to do this. So to me, he exemplifies, I think, the possibility that's out there today, that the opportunity for the cloud has opened up to so many researchers today. It's just amazing. And I think there's still so much more room for innovation in our industry, no matter what level you're in an organization or what walk of life you come from, that I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years.
That's a great way to wrap up our talk. And thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your insights with us. I'm looking forward to maybe doing another sequel sometime. Take care, Lita. Thank you very much.
Great.
This episode was produced by Pete Glowacki and myself, Allison Proffitt, with the BioIT World media team from www.bioitworld.com. It was hosted by Stan Gloss, founder of BioTeam, a life science IT consulting firm at the intersection of science, data, and technology. BioTeam builds innovative scientific data ecosystems that close the gap between what scientists want to do with their data and what they can do. Learn more at www.bioteam.net.